Hey everyone, Wolf Lord Rho here. Today we're discussing the Void Slumber of the Carcharodon Astra. A spoiler warning to begin here, as the events we're discussing today are from the Warhammer 40k novel Carcharodons Red Tithe by author Robbie McNiven. As always, I really recommend you read the stories for yourself first without spoilers, as that's the best way to enjoy the lore for yourself. But with that said, let's just jump straight in. So, across the vast range of Space Marine chapters, there's an absolute myriad of different characteristics, traditions, and even duties amongst them. More in truth than even the Adeptus Terra truly knows. We've got the famous traits of, say, the Space Wolves, the intended duty of their original successor chapters, that was to surround and imprison the Eye of Terror. We've even got the fabled Ultramarines, for example, and their running and managing of an entire empire. And then of course we have the lesser known Carcharodon Astra, who guard the void of space beyond the Imperium's border. A duty that goes unknown by most of the Imperium. Such is the existence of the chapter. Even they don't fully know the full truth of their origins. Highly believed to have begun as exiles from the Raven Guard Legion, a group of Astartes banished by Corax to atone and fulfill their duty beyond the Imperium. And this nigh on 10,000 year duty and isolation has obviously shaped the chapter that exists today, having to adapt to a fleet-based nomadic lifestyle of hardship, not having the usual benefits an ordinary chapter would. As such, they have their famous tithes by ancient decree that they enact upon imperial worlds, the Red Tithe, claiming a population to replenish the chapter's numbers, Astartes and mortal crew alike, and the Grey Tithe to restock the chapter's material needs. And then there's the simple reality of life and travel out beyond the galaxy, with the Marines of the chapter having adapted to spending a lot of time within suspended animation. It's a real interesting and unique adaptation of the chapter, and one I found really fascinating getting a glimpse of within the novel Red Tithe, seeing the Marines of Third Company begin to be awoken for their coming operation. Company Master Shah allowed the retinal scanner of the Cairo chamber to take its reading, remaining still and unblinking. There was a chime as it cleared him for entry. Disengaging locks clanged, followed by a click, click, click as the heavy blast doors, stamped with the Carcharodon's oceanic predator crest, rolled backwards. The lighting beyond was even murkier than elsewhere on board the White Moor. It barely reached the vaulted stone ceiling of the Cairo chamber, and gleamed weakly from the brass ribs that encased the upright tanks lining the walls. As Shah entered, there was a whirring noise. A dozen hardwired combat servitors, spread across the wide room, turned to track him with their weapons. The company master ignored them, and after a moment they jerked back to their original stances, like freakish marionettes, their threat assessment scans complete. The robed attendants scurrying through the chamber's shadows bowed. The room was silent bar the throb of the energy coils snaking across the deck underfoot. Around Shah, his brothers slumbered. There were 40 in all, half of his company, secreted in the forecastle of the strike cruiser's armour-plated prow. They slept in individual tanks, their bare, pale bodies hooked up to vitae monitors and nutrient feeds, and suspended in clear preservation fluid. Their lower faces were muzzled with respirator masks. It was how most of the chapter's battle brothers spent a great deal of their time in void space. Existing in the lifeless dark beyond the stars was no easy thing. The Carcharodon Astra had been roaming it for 10 millennia, cut off from all contact with the wider Imperium. The normal avenues for recuperation and replenishment utilised by Space Marine chapters were rarely open to them. The suspended hibernation afforded by the Cairo tanks provided the chapter with a method of rest between combat operations and training cycles, and helped preserve their strength. Typically, it was the younger brethren and initiates who utilised the tanks the most, overcoming deep void sickness through the meditational activities of their newly implanted sus-an membrane. Older Carcharodons like Shah tended to find it increasingly difficult to rest, even through the longer voyages. So the use of Cairo chambers is a unique way the chapter has adapted to resting and recuperating between missions, not to mention handling void sickness for the newer recruits. And it speaks to the real hardship of existence the chapter faces, that every ounce of strength must be harboured, valued, kept in preparation for when it is needed, for when the chapter must put down another foe of the Imperium. There's really not much else like it amongst the Astartes that I know of, even with other fleet-based chapters we know of, like the Dark Angels for example. And I guess that highlights the real difference of being truly out in the void, like the Carcharodons usually are. Other chapters are always within a system, or at least within easy reach of one, having a source of resupply when they need one. And it's not one or two of the company within this slumber either, but fully half of their total number. Again, a little sign that they really need to make the most of these opportunities when they can. And that's not even mentioning the mental toll of being beyond the galaxy, in nothing but the void. And there's actually another small scene elsewhere as well, that shows some of the company meditating within the great chamber the ancient dreadnoughts are housed in, which maybe we'll discuss another day. But it just shows the alternating ways in which the chapter goes about the method of recuperation. However, within this chamber, it is not only the third company who sleep, as there are 5 larger tanks dominating the end of the room. 5 larger tanks that contained 5 Terminators of the first company, the Red Brethren, who, like across all the companies of the Carcharodon Astra, have been assigned to the third to watch over them, to ensure they are enacting the chapter master's will. Eventually, he signalled to the surf attendants that waited on his orders. "Wake them," he said to them, glancing around the chamber at the rest of the demi-company. They started with the Red Brethren. Preset cogitator programs worked dashes of discord into the hibernating minds of the veteran Carcharodons, teasing their deep, drifting thoughts up towards surface consciousness. The temperature of the amniotic-like fluid in the tanks was raised. A pulse began to send increasingly violent tremors through each tank's framework. Valves in the deck beneath slid open, draining the preservation fluid. The levels lowered slowly as Shah watched, eventually reaching the upper back plating of the Terminators, and then their scarred scalps. As it was reduced down towards their skull and lightning engraved breastplates, Kahu's eyes snapped open. They were equal parts black and pitiless. Shah met them without flinching. His own gaze, he knew, was no different. Slowly, the Terminator brought his hand up and broke the seal on his respiration mask, pulling it away from his tattooed face. Its removal revealed a vicious, grinning maw, full of razor-sharp teeth. Shah did not return the mirthless expression. The last of the liquid gargled down the drainage valve. A light set into the scrimshawed skull tokens above the tanks winked green. There was a hiss as the thick crystal flex plates slid back into the recesses of their brass-ribbed flanks. The Red Brethren stepped out as one, and the deck shuddered. "Kia ore, Void Brother," Kahu said in his serpentine dead voice, pressing his skull close to Shah's in ritual greeting. Well met. Shah returned the gesture, stomaching his discomfort at Kahu's baleful presence. Kia ore, he replied. It is time for our final preparations, brother. We are 2 hours away from system re-entry. T. Kaharangi believes the traitors may have already struck. They will need to be destroyed before the tithing can begin. Kahu's vicious grin didn't falter. A truly red tithe then, brother Shah. Welcome home. The venerable chief librarian believes his visions are being realised, Shah added, ignoring the jibe. Around him, the other members of the slumbering company were waking, stepping out from their tanks to be robed by the attendants. Many of them, especially the younger ones, moved sluggishly, tense with chirocramps and the stomach-churning weakness that came with prolonged void sickness. Soon their pale, dripping scarred flesh would be death-plated and red-scarred, and the haunting dreams of Half-Sleep's depths would be forgotten amidst the thunder of battle. Old T. Kaharangi has his visions, Kahu said dismissively. Nothing can be allowed to impede the tithing. I do not need to remind you of your new duties as Reaper Prime, nor of the importance of the tithe to the future of the chapter. Shah sensed the black eyes of many of his brothers on Kahu and the Red Brethren. They were outsiders, what the chapter called not of the Shiva, their brutal presence disrupting the natural currents that ran beneath the surface of the Third Company. So we get to see the ritual greeting amongst the brothers here, the sheer terrifying appearance of them, with their shark-esque cold black eyes and filed sharp teeth. But more importantly, we get to see that reawakening process, the warming of the temperature, the pulses being sent through the pod, and the water being drained, luring the minds of the Marines from their hibernation, their dreams, back to the land of the living. And in seeing how deep this slumber is, you can understand why there was such strong security protocols in place to even enter the chamber, as the brothers are extremely vulnerable here, particularly the ordinary Third Company, who are not even within their armour like the Red Brethren. And while Kahu and the rest of the Red Brethren might emerge immediately ready for war as well, it's clear that many within the Third Company are not, requiring vital time for their bodies to readjust to full fighting effectiveness. Many of them, especially the younger ones, moved sluggishly, tense with chirocramps and the stomach-churning weakness that came with prolonged void sickness. So it's a real glimpse into the true heart of the chapter here, witnessing a vulnerableness that exists in spite of their lethality, their fearsome appearance, because of their exile and life within the void, because of the duty they perform for the Imperium. A truly, truly unique one. And so maybe this is why the Carcharodons are so appealing, not simply because of their unique name and appearance, tying into our shared fear and appeal of sharks within our ocean, but because they have a character and a depth as a chapter that deepens the more you get to see them, that makes you want to see more of them and learn more about them, about their chapter. And so as always everyone, what do you think? What do you think of the Carcharodons' void slumber, their hibernation? Are you surprised how much life within the void has altered the chapter's existence? And is it a shock to see it even affecting the mighty Space Marines of the chapter? Is this all part of the enigma that makes up the Carcharodon Astra? And do you hope to see more of life within the chapter, outside of battle? Get to witness, like here, the true heart of the chapter. As always everyone, leave your thoughts in the comments below. A huge thank you to all my subscribers, your support truly means a lot to me, it really does. If you're new, please consider subscribing to help the channel grow, and if you enjoyed this particular vid, then why not drop a like on it too. But with that said, I am off, and I'll see you all again real soon.